Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a fascinating journey through G.L. Fuentes' classic short story, A Letter to God. Now, if you're gearing up for your Class 10 English exams, or even if you just appreciate a really brilliantly crafted narrative, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to take a deep dive into some massive themes here: unquestioning faith, human empathy, and honestly, one of the most perfect examples of situational irony you'll find in modern literature. I absolutely love unpacking stories like this, mostly because they reveal so much about human nature, all wrapped up in a deceptively simple plot. Here's our roadmap for today. We've got 1. The devastating hailstorm. 2. Lencho's unwavering faith. 3. The postmaster's compassion. 4. 70 pesos short. 5. The situational irony. And finally 6. Core themes and takeaways. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The devastating hailstorm.
Let's set the scene, shall we? Picture a solitary house sitting right on the crest of a low hill in a sweeping Latin American valley. Out here, a poor farmer's entire livelihood, literally his family's survival, hinges on one completely unpredictable element: the weather. Meet our protagonist, Lencho. He's a hardworking, simple guy who knows every inch of his fields. Looking out over his ripe corn, which is dotted with these little kidney bean flowers, he knows the earth needs just one thing for a good harvest, and that's rain. Throughout the entire morning, he's done absolutely nothing but scan the northeast sky, so when those big drops finally start falling, you can imagine how his heart just fills with hope.
And this brings us to a brilliant illustration of the story's first major contrast. Lencho is so immensely relieved by this rain that he literally compares the water to money. He calls the 10 centavo drops big coins and the 5 centavo drops little ones. To him, they represent pure prosperity. But then, very suddenly, things change. A fierce wind whips up, and that sweet rain transforms into a brutal, unforgiving hailstorm. For a solid hour, hail just batters the farm like frozen pearls, until the field is as white as salt. Lencho's hope completely evaporates into utter despair. He even remarks that a plague of locusts would have left more food behind. His entire harvest is just totally wiped out.
Moving on to Section 2. Lencho's unwavering faith.
So, with his cornfield destroyed and his family staring down a year of starvation, let's look at how Lencho actually reacts to this nightmare. Notice how the author describes him here. He calls Lencho an ox of a man. He's this rugged manual laborer whose whole existence is tied to the dirt and the physical earth. He works like an animal to provide for his family. Now, you might expect a man defined by such heavy physical labor to only trust things he can touch and see, right?
But here's the twist. He was actually an educated man who knew how to read and write. And more importantly, he had this unshakable, blind belief that God's eyes see absolutely everything, even the stuff buried deep inside someone's conscience. Because he'd been taught that God is this ultimate protecting spirit, Lencho decides to do something incredibly literal. The following Sunday, he marches into town to write a very specific letter addressed simply to God.
Which brings us to Section 3. The postmaster's compassion. Our perspective now shifts away from the isolated farm and into the bustling local post office. Lencho drops his letter into the mailbox, totally confident in what he's just done. A little while later, a postman pulls it out, and he is just completely baffled by the address. I mean, who wouldn't be? He takes it straight to his boss, the postmaster.
Now, the crucial thing here is how the postmaster reacts. At first, this rather plump, friendly guy just bursts out laughing at the weird address. But almost immediately, he catches himself and turns dead serious. He is profoundly moved by the immense faith of this poor farmer. He actually taps the letter on his desk, wishing he had that kind of absolute confidence. And to make sure Lencho's faith isn't shattered, the postmaster doesn't just sit there marveling at it. He takes action. He actively organizes an anonymous charity drive right there in the office. He asks his staff for donations, hits up his friends, and even hands over a chunk of his own salary.
Section 4. 70 pesos short.
Even with all their amazing empathetic efforts, gathering the full amount is just impossible for the post office crew. You see, in his letter, Lencho had asked God for exactly 100 pesos. And that wasn't just some random, made-up number. It was the exact calculation of what he needed to re-sow his fields and keep his family alive until the next crop came in.
The following Sunday arrives, and the postmaster proudly watches from his office as Lencho was handed the return envelope, signed with just one word: God. Now, incredibly, Lencho shows absolutely zero surprise at receiving cash from the Almighty. That's how ironclad his faith is. But when he confidently rips open the envelope and counts the bills, he finds only 70 pesos.
and instead of feeling grateful for this literal miracle of anonymous charity, his face scrunches up in pure fury. He is 100% certain God couldn't make a math mistake, and definitely wouldn't deny his sincere request.
And that leads us to Section 5, the situational irony. Okay, if you're prepping for a Class 10 exam, you're going to want to burn this definition right into your memory, because the ending of this story is basically the textbook definition of situational irony. This happens when the outcome of a situation turns out to be the exact opposite of what you or the characters expect. Let's look at how Fuentes pulls this off.
Furious about the missing 30 pesos, Lencho storms right back up to the post office window, demands paper and ink, and writes a second letter to God. He asks for the rest of the cash, but then he delivers this absolute gut punch of a line. But don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks. The irony here is just off the charts. We, the readers, know exactly what happened behind the scenes, but Lencho is entirely in the dark. The very people he's accusing of being a bunch of crooks are actually his saviors. They are the compassionate folks who sacrificed their own hard-earned money to keep him afloat. Lencho's unquestioning belief in the divine is so intense and rigid that it literally blinds him to the everyday miracle of human kindness.
Finally, Section 6, core themes and takeaways.
As we wrap up this explainer, let's look at how these massive themes come together. We can cleanly separate this into two big concepts. On one side, we have supreme faith. Lencho's unquestioning belief shows the raw power of hoping against all odds. It genuinely sustained him through his darkest hour. But on the flip side, we have human empathy. The anonymous charity from the post office workers proves that quiet, selfless goodness absolutely still exists in society. The real tragedy, and honestly the genius of the story, is how these two beautiful concepts end up colliding into this huge misunderstanding. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. As you think about Lencho's situation, ask yourself, does pure, unquestioning faith sometimes blind us to the everyday miracles of human kindness right in front of us? It's a fascinating question, and I really encourage you to look out for the unsung postmasters quietly doing good deeds in your own life. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and keep exploring these incredible stories.